we've been talking about how Chris Jericho is very cold right now. His
Right.
overness has been deteriorating, I guess you could say. And to me, it just showed such a lack of awareness in the company. Maybe in their heads they think this is going to be this big return, right? But you and I can see clear as day, and the majority of our listeners that have contacted us seem to agree that the guy's cold right now. He doesn't have it. It's not a hot act. And they go ahead and they put Jericho all over this 3 hour show. You would have thought he was the biggest star in the world, or that they had landed the president of the United States or something. You would have thought the amount of TV time that was devoted to this guy in one episode, the beginning, the middle, the end, you would have thought they had the hottest fucking thing in the history of the business. And it did such a disservice to him because he is kind of cold right now. To give him an overexpose him in that way, I could not figure out what they were thinking.
You know, I'm a big Jericho fan, and I'm with you. We've talked about this before. The wrestling people, I think we all live in a bubble in our heads anyway. I watched the documentary on Christopher Hutchinson, and you know who he is. He's the big brain, the psychiatrist, psychologist, and scientist. And he was saying about you don't go to bed one day and be middle age and then wake up the next morning in old age. It's a slow process, and you get there before you realize it. Well, I'm starting to think that because of wrestling and because we all live in a bubble of some sort, but they are in a bubble because every week it's that 3 hours and then road shows and everything else and then SmackDown. That time goes by that they don't understand that time has gone by. Chris was over very, very well. He was the first, correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't he the first guy to own both belts?
Yes, first
Okay.
undisputed champion.
Yeah.
Which I would point to, and if you look at his championship reigns in the company, I think one of the things that hurt him was some of this starty, stoppy pushes, and then at times over pushes to try to make up for it. I look at when he beat Triple H for the belt, but it was a false switch and the ref reversed it. I thought that took so much steam out of him to screw up his first win like that. And then I felt like they were trying to make up for it by making him the undisputed champion. And that to me was the over push, and the fans didn't buy him in that role. So I'm not saying all this is his fault. He's definitely had some odd booking of either under push or over push, both of which have hurt him.
Yeah, and I getting back to what I was laying down was the thing was he was coming back, so they just assumed, well, Jericho's over. Let's write this down. No one said, whoa, wait a minute. When Chris left the last time, we beat him like a drum. We really haven't made a big thing of him the last few returns. And then after he returns, we beat him again. He goes away, and the people are used to this. Maybe we should sit down and let's design something very clever where he's coming back. Whether we that he shows up unannounced. I'm just throwing things off the top of my head. He shows up unannounced. He comes in and he asks for his band to play anything, not just have him appear
I
like
I would
Topsy.
love a
He just
I would
grew.
love a heel run where the gimmick is that he thinks he's a much bigger star than he is. I would love for him to show up and he's mad that they won't let his band play and he forces them to let his band play and he comes in and acts like he's the biggest rock star that ever lived. I think this guy is ripe for a heel run, almost like when The Rock came back at one point, and people kind of forget this, but one of the times, and this is maybe 12 years ago at this point, however long it's been, where The Rock was making movies, but he wasn't making them full time yet, and he came back and the crowd kind of resented him, and
Yep.
he did go heel, I think, for the last match against Austin, and it was some of the best stuff he'd ever done. So maybe
Yeah,
Jericho needs to go in that role a little bit and kind of embrace this resentment with the idea being that he thinks he's this top guy and the fans just not buying it.
yeah, and I could see where you're going with this. Could you imagine if he was being interviewed and uh, the phone rings and he picks it up and says, "Excuse me for 1 second. I know I shouldn't do this." And he says, "Listen, Mick, You shouldn't have called me. I'm busy. I'm on a live TV. I can't get you on as my opening act. I will in Amsterdam. I'll try my damnedest, but unfortunately, I got 9-inch nails or Huskadoo or whoever you want to say. Mick, I'll try to get you definitely in London. If not, I'll leave you some tickets. I mean,
Oh, that's
Jericho
good.
Jericho would be that kind of guy. I mean, he's there's something about Jericho that I see all the time, and every time I see it, I say that's a heel move. You know how when they're showing the clips at Raw or different things, and the last clip is Jericho, and he has the microphone, and it's obviously at one of his band's performances
Right.
when he sticks the microphone out. You know what I mean?
Well,
Yeah,
there's always been something about Jericho that was kind of missing because if we even go back to when you were booking him,
yeah,
okay, long hair, good-looking kid, great worker in the ring, and he can talk. This guy should be the total package in terms of a lower weight guy. Obviously, he's not 6'5", but especially when you guys had a cruiserweight division, this guy should be money, right? As a babyface in theory.
right.
And yet, it really, for whatever reason, just didn't click. And what got him over? What got him over? And to me, it's one of my favorite runs of any wrestler in history. I cannot even tell you what a huge Jericho mark I was in '98, his heel cruiserweight title run. Uh, what got him over was being upset that people didn't love him as a babyface and insisting he was still a babyface and he was sorry. So kind of that sarcastic "I'm your hero" thing. Even at like his creative peak, he bombed as a babyface and had to go in this other direction. So it's funny in a way we've come full circle and nothing has changed.
Yeah, and I would love to see him do what we're talking about because, you know, uh, that is. Here's the thing: the kid's, he's not a kid anymore, but he's multi-talented, and there's a bit of him, that comes. You know what we've talked about? If you let a personality come through, a real personality, and don't script everything for him, you're going to have somebody that's a big winner rather than a bunch of guys that are just straight across the board. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
He does have that arrogant little personality inside of him. You know what I mean? He's always wanting to know what's going on. I mean, he refused to do a thing for Goldberg, and he's got that movement. I mean, he's rich, handsome. I mean, he's got a lot of things going for him. Who wouldn't dislike him? Especially, if your girlfriend or wife or fiance is going, oh boy, he still is a handsome guy. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like, George Clooney has improved with age, if you ask me. You know what I mean? So maybe that's the way to go with him. And here's the other thing: he has the experience to carry this out better than anybody on their roster right now.
Yeah, and the thing is, it would take a little bit of an ego evaluation for him because